רואים על הרכס שצופה אל העיר העתיקה. אנחנו נהיה הראשונים להיכנס אליה. לנוע אל השער.
אנחנו הולכים ומעמיקים לתוך העיר העתיקה.
הר הבית בידינו, כאן תלמיד, הר הבית בידינו. נרות תאים כפר, כל הכבוד, כל הכבוד.
So behind me here is Givat Tachmoshet, Ammunition Hill, which I know that many of you at least visited. Ammunition Hill is probably one of the most famous, if not the most famous battle that takes place in 1967 when it comes to Jerusalem. Now you have to remember what's taking place here. The concept of attacking or capturing or retaking the old city is not on anyone's radar. Nobody's thinking about doing that. And remember, the paratrooper unit, and especially the 55th Brigade, the 66th Battalion, are waiting to be able to jump into the Sinai. They're waiting, they're sitting there on an Air Force base, waiting to jump into the Sinai until finally they get told, you're not jumping into El Arish. Now, paratroopers who knew they were going to be jumping into El Arish beforehand in the morning, terrified about the fact they were going to be jumping against all of this new Soviet equipment in the Sinai, which the Egyptians now had, all of a sudden are now upset that they're not going to battle. And they get taken on buses and brought up to Jerusalem. They get brought up to the neighborhoods not far from here, including Beit HaKerem. I'm going to tell you towards the end an unbelievable story that takes place in the area of Beit HaKerem. And one of the places they're brought to is this battle that's behind us. Givat Tachmoshet, Ammunition Hill, is a place that is surrounded by Jordanians. It's a place which is the old British police school, which now sits in the hands of the Jordanians. Fortified with the trenches, barbed wire, mines, nobody really knows what's here. How are they going to take this place? And the sacrifice is going to be immense when they come in it. They need to have the element of surprise. And so the element of surprise means that at 2:30 in the morning, they're going to start the attack, hoping that the Jordanians wouldn't be ready for them. But since they had never really seen what they were about to go into, and the highest area that we had was not far from here in a place called Geula, the JRoots building, where they could take at least photos, aerial photos of the areas. You weren't allowed to fly planes over these areas according to the agreement that we had with the Jordanians for 19 years. So we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into. We had maps, but as they entered in, the burst of fire from the Jordanians was going to be immense. Now you can ask, why didn't the Israeli Air Force during the war bombard it? Why didn't we send our tanks to bombard the area? And this is a message which continues on till this day. So many of us that have followed the news, whether it be during the intifadas, the first, second intifada, or Lebanon, we have made it our call not to injure civilians. Because there were so many civilians around the area of Ammunition Hill, we didn't drop bombs on the area. And the 55th Brigade had to take it upon themselves to go in and do the battle themselves. Going into this battle, most of the officers who are in the 55th Brigade are killed. Remember the motto of the Israeli army. Acharai, after me. First the katzin, first the officer, then the soldiers. And it's now down to the regular soldier, after the officer's been killed, to take the initiative and to be able to conquer this hill. One by one, they move forward. One by one, another one falls, another person's friend dies. Many are injured. Until they finally reach the final bunker, which you can actually see right behind you now, under the flag, which is waving so proudly over Ammunition Hill. By the time they get to the bunker, which takes a huge amount of TNT to blow up, and they start to count their dead at 6:30 in the morning when the battle has ended, we've lost 36 of the paratroopers. 71 Jordanians are killed, but 36 of our great, great people who are taking it upon themselves to start this battle, which is then going to go northwards and also east towards the hills that surround the old city. We knew we had to take this area to be able to make that ring complete. The ring that had started on the 5th of June. Remember, the Jordanians were told, don't come into the war. Levi Eshkol went on TV to King Hussein. He made a statement asking him, please stay out of the war. But King Hussein had already made an agreement with Nasser in Egypt that his forces will fall under Nasser's should he need them. You have to go a little bit back to remember what's taking place that's brought us to this spot over here. To remember the closing of exactly where I'm sitting now, the name of the street is the name of the Tiran Straits, which were closed by the Egyptians. We're actually just in the area which is called the 6th Day War Street, Rehov Shesh Dayamim. All of these things are connected to the history. Nasser shut the Tiran Straits, effectively strangling Israel from the south, kicked out the UN, and Israel went into unbelievable alert. Hospitals got ready to really see a terrible destruction. They weren't sure what was going to take place because we were about to be up against a massive force, the Egyptians. We were totally outnumbered by soldiers, totally outnumbered by tanks and army and armed warfare, totally outnumbered when we talk about the Air Force. And for 16 days, it was very tough for the Israelis. They didn't know what their government wanted from them. What was Levi Eshkol going to do? He tried to put confidence back into the people by bringing back Moshe Dayan here, the war hero, and making him defense minister. This man, Moshe Dayan, Levi Eshkol, Yitzhak Rabin, and the others will make the unbelievable decision of taking the war to the Arabs. And on the 5th of June, they will bomb in the morning while the Egyptian pilots are still having breakfast. And while the head of the Egyptian Air Force has taken up other dignitaries from the army up into the air to be able to see their planes and to be able to see their tanks over the Sinai, and he's given a directive to the whole of the Egyptian army that they have to hold back their anti-cannon warfare against any planes because he's up in the air. The Israeli Air Force travel from their airfields 20 meters above sea level and start to bomb the airfields, destroying the Egyptian Air Force in one foul swoop. Imagine that. Here we were, an army outnumbered, but here we were like on the wings of eagles, with the shofar that would be blown by Rav Goren at the very end of the capturing of Jerusalem and in Hebron and other places, hearing the shofar calling us on that first day as we went and flew over and bombed those areas. But we still had to capture Sinai. We still had to be able to make sure that we would be able to clear all those tanks and all those soldiers that were there. So these paratroopers were waiting there before they were brought up here. But when they were brought up here, after having the disappointment of not being in Sinai, they realized, even with the great loss that they had of 36 soldiers that died from their unit, we are now part of one of the greatest stories of the Jewish people. Nobody had ever thought they could write this in a history book, the way that it was going to play out.